Hi everyone, and welcome to the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce Women in Business presentation, The Conomy. I am your Women in Business Chair, Amanda Kunzer, and Director of Operations at Good Therapy Counseling. Tonight's presentation was organized by your Women in Business Board, Pam Bartlett, Pinot's Palette, Sharmila Flower, the Red Lion Institute, Amy LaFaus, Catholic Charities, Patty Miglin, Go Girl Communications, Leah Setson, Grunick Family Law, Kim White, Career and Networking Center, Jackie Claremont, Naperville District 203, Amina Saeed, River Valley Law Firm, Michelle Clement, Avenda Naperville, Anita Knotts, Lotus Women's Institute, Heather Gottfried, Citibank, Lara Stanton, Sikich LLP, and Ashley Shee from Office Evolution. I want to take a moment to recognize our Woman of the Quarter, Alexis Rago. Alexis is the owner of Marketing Manna LLC and is also the co-creator of the Work on Your Business Retreat, where small business owners focus on their marketing strategies and website strategies through a workshop style approach to receive real-time feedback about their company's brand, messaging, customers, user experience, and website SEO. A little background about Alexis. She was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and proudly calls Naperville home since 2014. Alexis immersed herself in the community through volunteer opportunities at Prairie Elementary, Congregation Beth Shalom, as well as helping nonprofits and participating in local events, including running 2 half marathons. When Alexis' entrepreneurial spirit created Market Manna LLC in 2018, she became involved in the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce and currently leads the marketing efforts for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as is a member of Teamwork. Alexis is a proud member of the board of directors for NC-17. When we asked what advice she has for other women entrepreneurs, she told us, ladies, let's continue to help each other. There's plenty of work for everyone. When we raise each other up, we all increase our chances for success. There are so many talented women doing cool things. Help spread the word about other cool businesses. Invite them to networking events, webinars, lunch. Power lunches are not just for men. Let's bring a new meaning to Ladies Who Lunch. We need to share our true talents because there are people who would feel less pain because of our expertise. So we thank you, Alexis, for being our Woman of the Quarter. I want to take a moment and introduce our non-for-profit Catholic Charities. Amy LaFaus is the Director of Community Services, and she's going to discuss how they're working with their clients on reducing debt, gaining financial independence, and purchasing budget planners for each of their households in their supportive housing programs.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Amanda. As Amanda said, my name is Amy LaFaus, and I am the Director of Community Services for Catholic Charities in DuPage. We have the honor of being Women in Business's nonprofit this year. Amongst many services provided to DuPage County community, Catholic Charities provides supportive housing programs to families experiencing homelessness. While in the program, the family's goals are focused on reducing debt, increasing income, and gaining financial independence. To assist families with obtaining their financial goals, Catholic Charities is collecting $13 donations to supply all 60 of our families in our supportive housing programs with a financial budget planner. It is our hope that this tool will give families a fun, interactive way to manage and gain control of their personal finances. If you missed it when you registered for this event, a link will be posted in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. So right now I want to take a moment to introduce one of our fierce ladies of our panel tonight, Anita Knotts. Anita Knotts has spent nearly 3 decades in financial services. First as an investment advisor working with high net worth clients, and then as a senior leader managing various teams. After a successful career in corporate America, Anita recently launched Lotus Women's Institute. The mission of her organization is to attract more women into the financial services, mentor, and coach these women, and ultimately place them with companies that are truly committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Anita strongly feels that finance is a great career path for women and wants to personally make an impact on the industry and ultimately society by changing the way we view women, money, and power. I introduce Anita.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here. I have to tell you, this is the strangest setup. We are slowly coming out of COVID, and we're slowly coming into like human being territory and human being interaction. And so we've got a little bit of a hybrid situation going. I feel like a news reporter, but here we go. I will try to make this the most exciting topic you folks have ever heard of. Mark my words. As Amanda mentioned, I have spent all 29 years of my career in financial services. So you might be asking, why would a woman who's helped other women and other clients learn how to invest? What does that have to do with the pandemic? We're going to find out tonight. And I'm going to spend about 20 minutes going through my presentation. As I mentioned, it's a pretty serious topic. So while I'd love to do a jig and a dance and really entertain you, I think tonight is really going to be more about understanding what we can do ourselves to help ourselves flow back into recovery, and also others in the community, right? Because as I'm going to get into here, the interesting thing to me as I was prepping for this, how black and white this was. Like certain groups were impacted and others just were not. So we need to look at this in a very honest fashion if we were to say, what do we all need to do to help our society move forward? So I'll spend about 20 minutes talking through, and then I'm going to bring up my esteemed panel. I'll keep you all in suspense as to who it is, just to make you stick around. And once that happens, we'll actually dive into much more, many more questions. We obviously will take questions from all of you out there. We want to keep you engaged in this as well. So I just want to end my intro by saying thank you for spending this lovely evening with us to talk about a very important topic. So Linda, if you want to kick it off. So the title of my presentation is Money-Wise, Tales of the She-Conomy. And I'd love to say that I came up with this phenomenal term, right, she-conomy, but I didn't. It's been floating around for a while. And I thought what we would do, if we want to get to the first slide, is talk about what that actually means. What is a she-conomy? Well, we talk a lot about where we still need to make progress as women, right? That seems to be on the forefront of a lot of topics these days. But let's keep in mind, women have already been the drivers of economic growth. So I want to kind of go through a few statistics that actually show you collectively how we've all sort of moved the dial in our own way. Prior to the pandemic last year, at the start of 2020, nearly 60% of women were in the workforce. Take that in addition to other phenomenal statistics, like I've read a lot of women getting not only undergraduate degrees, more than men in fact, but also graduate degrees. So over the past several decades, there's a lot of women getting higher education, moving into the workforce, and kind of moving back into that path of independence. 30% of married households, women actually earn more. And one of the interesting observations I've made over the last couple of years, at least, is that there's actually a handful of men that are more than happy to stay home and be that stay-at-home parent. And I view that as a tremendous positive aspect and a step towards equality in our society. Women as consumers, 70 to 80% of household purchases are made by women. Women participating in this level of economic decision-making, I mean, think about it in your own families, right? Would you ever let your husband go buy a refrigerator by himself or a car? I mean, even if you're not the one driving it, right? Women tend to be a large part of that decision-making process. Women, and this is one of my favorites, women control 2/3 of private wealth in this country right now. That amounts to $22 trillion right now. Try to wrap your head around that number, right? And in a few slides, I'm going to tell you what we can kind of foresee going forward in the next 9 to 10 years. That number is going to get a lot bigger, hint, hint. The last bullet point, for me as a woman, as a leader in business in corporate America, it's very meaningful. When you look at the S&P 500, right, 500 companies in that index, 41 are led by women. That sounds pretty good, right? Really, it boils down to 8%, folks. And 8%, while we may not, you certainly will not see me doing a jig for 8%. But when you look at where we were, okay, you have to see what the foundation was. Where did we come from? 8% is actually progress, believe it or not. So let's keep pushing in that direction. And we'll talk about ways to encourage each of us to start stepping out of our comfort zone and into roles that are really going to help us overall. So next slide. This is the slide that starts with da, 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 da. Okay, so did the pandemic lead us from a she-conomy to a she-session? Try to say that 1,000 times. She-session. What is the definition of a she-session? Well, it's an economic downturn. Job and income losses, though, are primarily affecting more women than men. Sounds pretty easy, right? Let's kind of focus on the stats that got us here. More than 25% of women have left the workforce, and that number is creeping up higher every week. Women have lost over 5 million jobs since the start of the pandemic. That number just blows me away. Women's labor force participation was, believe it or not, it was at a historic high late 2019. Now it's gone to a historic 33-year low, somewhere around the low 50s. Not good, ladies. So the prognosis, what do we see going forward? Could be several years before we're back to whatever normal means, right? We each have a different definition of normal anymore. I heard our esteemed president last week talking about the stimulus package, and I believe the time frame he mentioned in terms of getting people back to work, getting women back to work, was about 28 months. So it's not around the corner. So I think with that last bullet point, one of the things that I want to mention to people, let's not, it's a huge positive that we're all able to kind of be in front of each other, not wearing masks and such, but I would really urge you, don't put all of that in the rear view just yet. Because when I hear a time frame like 28 months, my thought process is, we're not out of this yet, right? We're not out of this yet. So there are things that we need to focus in terms of what can we do to help our fellow community members, others in society that maybe got hit harder than some of us, right? I also have had a question aimed at me a couple of weeks ago. You know, why is the stock market going up? If things are so bad, why is the market continuing to kind of ignore all of this? Let's keep in mind, and I certainly don't want to make this more of an investment-only discussion, but something to remember. The economy and the stock market are two very different things. So the economy is kind of puttering along, right? The fundamentals are okay, but the market is going up because the market is forward-looking. What does that mean? What does forward-looking mean? Market knows that there's vaccinations. Market knows that there's stimulus dollars coming, which means people are going to start spending, right? And what does that mean? It means it's better for the companies. Remember the 500 companies I was talking about at the beginning? Those 500 companies are going to start benefiting because of vaccinations, because of people spending, because of hiring picking up. The market likes that data. That's why you see it creeping up. Yes, it's volatile, but overall the trend seems to be going up, right? So that's the reason why some of us on a day-to-day basis may kind of be feeling cruddy, and we might see some not so great economic data, but the market continues to go up. So just a little bit of a lesson there. We can hit the next slide. So why are we in this situation? I want to tell you about this quote at the top of the slide that, again, blew me away. Just heard about it a couple of weeks ago. Don't know when she said this, but I'm assuming it's recent. Sociologist Jessica Calarca makes this comment. Other countries have social safety nets. The United States has women. Let that sink in, folks. Let that sink in. The United States has women. We are the social safety net for this country, right? The pandemic was hard on women because the US economy is hard on women. Think about what happened in your own houses. I kid you not, one of the things that I feel most gratitude for is the fact that I had a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old at home. The families out there that had really young ones, God bless them all. I don't know how they did it, and I don't know how they continue to do it. Working mothers, though, let's call it for what it is. Let's just make that statement right here. Working mothers primarily shoulder the burden of caregiving responsibilities. I'm mentioning kids, but keep in mind that could also be adult parents, right, that need help. Think about how the pandemic affected our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles. Women were out there trying to provide support for all of these family members. Don't even get me going on the inadequate childcare system. I'm out of the daycare spectrum now, thankfully, again. But I know that when my husband and I, the day that we were done with daycare, he and I both felt like we got a big raise. Childcare is not inexpensive here. And he and I are both blessed. We had jobs, we had good paying jobs. We were very fortunate. Not a lot of people, you can't assume that everybody in America lives the same way. That needs to be fixed, and fixed soon. And some of this, especially this next bullet point, is probably pretty obvious. Female-dominated industries were strongly impacted. Healthcare, education, service, hospitality, retail, right? So, of course, women's labor force participation suffered because these were the industries that were laying off people left and right. Now, some good news is that, for example, as retail is beginning to pick up again, it appears that the people returning to work in retail, most of them are women. So I do think that we'll see a turnaround as this continues, but right now, I think it's important for us to realize what got us here before we talk about what is going to get us out of this. So you might say, well, it's bad for some women. I get that, Anita. Some women, maybe it's not so bad. It's not really bad for the whole world. Will you please stop depressing us before I drink this entire bottle of wine? But let me just give you one example. This slide is just one dynamic that I'm speaking of, okay? And I've titled it, trust me on this one, what's bad for women is bad for all. The progress towards gender pay equality, for example, is going to either stall or reverse. It was already moving slow, folks. Now it's going to either come to a halt or reverse. What does that mean? Women are going to say, well, why should I return to work? I'm going to be paying to put my child in a daycare. I'm going to be getting paid less for doing the exact same work that this dude sitting next to me is doing. Why bother, right? So if they're not going to step into the game, the professional career is going to stall. What happens when the professional career stalls? You're going to have fewer women moving up that ladder towards leadership. What happens when there's fewer women, and I will even say minorities in leadership? You're going to see a reversal of the progress for diversity in leadership. And then what happens? Lack of diversity in leadership. I know this for a fact. There's any number of studies that have proven this. It hurts the company's bottom line. That's when you get the CEOs to start listening. What? Profitability? What? Yes, lack of diversity in leadership will hurt your profitability. And if a company's profitability is impacted, don't you think this could ultimately hurt the economy as a domino effect? So believe me when I say to you, if we're not taking care of our most vulnerable in the situation that we're in, we're all going to be hurting. It's reason for us to pay attention. So what can society do? And I hate reusing that word, but it's the largest word or expression that I could think of. So when I say society, I'm looking at corporate America, I'm looking at government, lawmakers, and ultimately you and I. Companies and lawmakers can certainly help by mandating paid parental leave. We are the only country in the industrialized world that does not have paid parental leave. Maternal, paternal, I'm talking about both. We do not mandate companies, and shame on me, I only learned this recently. We do not mandate companies to have paid sick leave. So if your child is sick, young child, right? Or another family member, or you, if you're sick and your company does not have paid sick leave, guess what happens? We've all seen this. People show up to work and cough on everybody, right? We don't need that. Affordable childcare, I already spent a few minutes talking about that. Flexible work arrangements. Here's something that I think in a positive way is going to come out of this. I believe truly that the right companies post-pandemic, when everybody returns to work, or most people, they're going to look at the situation and say, what have we learned from this? How do we retain the best of our employees, both male and female? What do we need to do for them to create a work environment where they can thrive, where they can be productive? And guess what happens with productive employees? They do add to your bottom line. This last bullet point here, promoting employees based on potential and not just achievement. That's a biggie for me. That too is an area where companies can have a very strong impact. If women take a little bit of a side route, right, step off the path for a bit, taking care of what they need to for their families, coming back in, give them those advanced assignments, give them those projects, give them those promotions. They may not have had the chance to show you the achievement just yet. Promote them based on their potential. We've been doing it for men all of these years. Let's do it for women as well. Promote based on achievement. These are things that leadership at the best companies will focus on as we get women back into the workforce. I want to end with a slide, and I have to be careful in how I say this. I don't want anyone to think of all the prior slides as me saying everybody else has to fix this problem. I am a huge believer in focusing in what is within our own radius of control, right? What can Anita do for herself? What can each of us do for ourselves? When I say that we're all in this together, it means corporate America, it means lawmakers, it means president and vice president, but it also means you and me, all right? So I want the women to listen to this slide very closely. The numbers here don't lie, and these are not numbers that I've come up with, all right? Women live longer. We have a longer life expectancy by about 5 years. I believe last I looked, it was 81 years old. Unfortunately, in this country, we have a very high rate of divorce. And recently, this concept of gray divorce. People wake up, they turn 50, they look at their spouse and they say, do I want to spend the rest of my life with you, right? It could go either way. And either way, for women, there's a whole lot of living to do, even at the age of 50, right? Because of that longer life expectancy. 8 out of 10 women, and depending on who you ask, it might even be 9 out of 10 women, are going to become sole decision makers in their family at one point or another, either because of divorce, either because of widowhood, you never know. And the first slide that I had talked about that 22 trillion number today. That's going to grow to 30 trillion in just 9 years. 9 years goes by pretty quickly. 30 trillion in private wealth, right? You have to kind of express that curiosity and start learning about what it is that you need to do to protect your future you. You can start by determining for yourself that you're going to own your financial security. Paying off debt, especially the high interest rate debt. We always talk about that emergency fund. And depending on which website you're looking at, depending on which advisor you ask, that emergency fund and how many months you need, it's going to differ. My rule of thumb, think about where you're working right now. And if you were to lose that job tomorrow, how long will it take for you to replace that exact dollar amount per month? That's how many months you need in terms of an emergency fund. Again, ask somebody else and they may have a different rule of thumb. It's all good. At the end of the day, you're the one who needs to sleep at night, right? And the third one, of course, I'm biased because I come from the investment arena, but ladies, invest, invest, invest. The investment industry has done a phenomenal job of scaring the pants off of women when it comes to investing. And I'm here to tell you it's not that difficult, right? As soon as you start working, if you're a young woman in your early 20s, you just started, start stashing money away. We're going to get into that with the panel discussion in a bit, so I won't steal too much thunder here. But just start. It's never too early and it's never too late. If you're 50 and you just found yourself, you're finding yourself on the cusp of a divorce, you've never taken any interest in what's been going on financially. You've kind of outsourced all of that to your husband, right? It's still not too late. I would absolutely urge you to find trusted advisors that you can surround yourself with. That's the first step, but it is doable. And I certainly don't want anybody viewing this and saying, oh my gosh, I've done none of this. I'm in trouble. You are not in trouble because you're listening to us today. You are taking notes and you're going to act upon these things after this call. So ultimately, I think I will be taking questions, but right now I'm going to move over in this direction and invite my esteemed panel to join. This is the live camera stuff, but I want to make sure that we're capturing everybody. Yes. Linda, are we all on? There's a table there. The table speaking to us too, folks. So, okay, well, I get very excited anytime I have the pleasure of sitting next to two women in financial services because, oh my gosh, it doesn't happen very often. So I am honored to have you both sitting here. So let me make some introductions. Lara Stanton is a CPA and Director of Audit and Insurance at Sikich LLP with over 25 years of experience, specializing in employee benefit plans. Her experience includes serving as Engagement Director on audits, performing QC inspections for employee benefit plan audits, and preparing SOC. I know how much everybody likes jargon. What is SOC?
It's service organization controls. So
sure. I knew that. Service Organization Control reports for audit teams. She is also a frequent speaker at employee benefit related conferences. Thank you for joining us, Lara.
Thanks for having me.
Heather Gottfried has been active in the financial services industry since 2004. God bless you, lady. After working with PNC Private Client Services in Naperville for 10 years, she was recruited by Citibank's Citi Gold Wealth Management to manage one of their largest high affluent client books of business in Oak Brook, where she's been for the past 4 years. Heather serves as a wealth relationship manager, coordinating her client's Citi Gold dedicated team, providing a full range of financial services, focusing on holistic financial planning, which is critical, banking services, and customized asset planning and distribution solutions. Heather lives in Aurora with her 15-year-old daughter, Aspen, what a beautiful name, and has been an active member of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce and Women in Business for 14 plus years. Ladies, thank you both. So we have quite a bit to get to, but I'd like to maybe start with Heather. The last year has really given a lot of people in financial services a lot to think about, a lot to kind of muddle through with their clients. Tell me a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about what those conversations have been like with your clients.
Sure. For a lot of our clients, it was basically just keeping the lines of communication open. You know, obviously with the pandemic, there were challenges as far as people being homebound. And so our number one concern was just making sure that people and their families were okay because, you know, that's obviously number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, you know, how has this affected your finances? And so a lot of the things you spoke of, you know, women having to leave the workforce or having to make changes, how is that impacting your family and the financial needs?
So, and I think this is relevant for probably the majority of the people listening to this. When you have clients, you've got male clients, you've got female clients, how does the dialogue differ? And if so, how does it differ with your female clients?
You know, I think finances for everyone is an emotional topic. And I think the places I see where women differ is that we tend to be more the planners, right? We're not the immediate reactionary type. We like to think about things. We like to say, how is this going to impact me on, you know, my whole family, not just an immediate type of concern. And so definitely with a lot of my clients, we spend a lot of time going through, you know, the impacts, how it's going to impact you overall, and not just, you know, what's it going to do today, but what's it going to do moving forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. Heather and I kind of come from a similar world. Lara, a little bit more of a peripheral role that we're going to get into. But I do agree that women tend to think of, as investors, we tend to think of, you know, am I going to have enough to take care of the people in my life that I care about, that are dependent on me, and they're not so keen on, did I beat the benchmark last quarter?
Exactly.
You know, it's not really about that. Lara, you're working with employee benefit plans, and I know that quite possibly a lot of people in our audience might be business owners. So can you tell me, what is it that they can do in terms of for themselves and also for their employers or for their employees in terms of helping them save for retirement?
That's a great question. Obviously, I concentrate a lot on the 401k plan arena, and it's a great, besides, you know, the obvious tax benefits, you're assuming your highest earning is now. So by putting away money in a 401k, you're avoiding taxes at a higher tax rate, and then you're taking them out when your income is lower, so lower tax rate.
Yes.
All your earnings, tax-free. For an employer, there are administrative costs, but when you're looking at a savvy recruit, somebody that is comparing benefits from where they're coming from or comparing two offers and your company's on the table, the 401k plan will be a big sell, especially if you have a match or profit sharing, because match is additional money. It's an additional benefit.
That's
it's your salary, it's your match, it's your profit sharing, it's your health benefits. I mean, that adds up quite a bit to what the company is offering. And so I think the more savvy women are and others in comparing where they're going to go when they're looking at job offers, they're looking at just past salary.
So I'd like to put a fine point on a very important point that you just made. If you all have 401k plans, or you have daughters or nieces who just started in the industry and they have a company that has a 401k plan, it's very important. I want to really emphasize what Lara just said. If the company offers a match, you need to be stashing away at least that much. Otherwise, you're essentially throwing away free money, right?
That is, I have in my notes, money or leaving money on the table.
Correct.
If you don't absolutely maximize. So if your employer matches 3% of 6%, defer at least 6%, so you get that full match.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
So if we took a step back and just talked about investing in general, maybe Heather, I'll go to you with this. I understand that it can be an intimidating topic, especially if you've never done it before, if you've outsourced it to somebody else in your life. We encourage women. I always say that it's not a luxury. It's not a luxury to be able to outsource. It's a necessity to be able to be an active participant in your financial future. What does that mean, actually, when you hear something like that? How is it that you convince women to kind of step into that role a little bit more?
Right. Well, I think it's just putting that emphasis on education. I mean, I feel like even today I'm taking notes, you know, and it's stuff that I know, but I like to write things down. I like to say, if you're not educating yourself and growing, then you're dying, basically, right?
Correct.
So for me, the most important thing is education, and I spend a lot of time on that with my clients.
Yes.
But there's so many tools out there. I mean, you could basically Google anything or go to any website and learn the education.
Right.
And what you'll find is every company has the same products, but you want to find somebody that you truly trust. And you mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
You know, somebody that you trust them, you're able to sit down, you're comfortable with them, they don't intimidate you, and they take the time to really find out what you need and how they can assist you. And I think that's probably the biggest thing out there.
Yes.
You know, without talking about products or anything else, it's the education and you being comfortable with what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, and your advice is going to be, I think about my 20-some-year-old self. That was like, what's the 401k plan and why do I care?
Yeah.
Now that I'm approaching closer to retirement in the beginning of my career, now I really care. Now I really, so when you're advising women in different parts of their life, they just became parents. Now they're taking care of aging parents. They're looking toward retirement. I mean, your advice changes, right? On how
Sure.
to invest,
Sure.
how aggressive to be or conservative. I wonder if like how we would approach different ages would be interesting to talk about. For me.
Yes, you're right. Through their life cycles, it does change. And I think the constant is to just do it, right? I always say, as Nike said,
I like
just
it.
do it.
Just
right?
do it.
Just do it.
Something.
And right now, you see women here who can easily help you, right? So feel free to shoot these folks an email if you just want to know, point me in the right direction, right? It's not as complex as I think the industry has made it out to be. Stepping away a little bit from investing, but then talking about the pandemic and the impact that that's had. What is it that, Lara, I'll start with you. What is it that companies can be doing to retain employees in this situation?
You know, even pre-pandemic, I think some of the things that employers are learning is you have to have flexible arrangements.
Yes.
I mean, over my career, it was kind of a new concept to work from home, work flexible work schedules. I've seen so many women, going back to some of your earlier slides, walk out of the workforce, because if you're going to force the woman to choose between her family and work and you won't be flexible, you're going to lose. The employer's going to lose.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is flexibility. We know how to multitask. I will get my work done. I'm a professional. It may be 10 o'clock at night till midnight.
Right.
It may be 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. I've done all those shifts over the years. You know, it may be why they're in preschool. It may be why they're in school. It may be at the soccer practice where I have an hour to make phone calls.
Right.
We'll get the work done. And I think it's having that flexibility is huge.
Yes. Yes.
And even more so in the pandemic.
For sure. And I think things that have happened with the pandemic have made people rethink things, make sure that my affairs are in order, make sure that if something does happen to me, what's the impact on my family and what's gonna happen. And a lot of people have put a bigger emphasis, say, on estate planning and making sure that things are all in order.
Yes.
Because we've all lost people in our lives that we didn't expect to lose.
That's right.
And here this happens and you hear of somebody that you went to high school with who just passed away and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I am 51 and and here's what's happening, and it's not just me, it's happening to everybody. So.
Right. So here's an offbeat question that I'll ask both of you. I'll start with you, Heather. Why have you stayed in the workforce?
Well, number one, I'm a single mom, so I have a little mouth to feed, and then she wants her, newest technologies and clothes and all that business. So that's number one. Number two, I'm in a field that I truly love, and so I enjoy helping people. I enjoy what I do, and so it's. In fact, when they forced me to be at home a couple days a week, I actually hated it. So I couldn't wait to get back to the office. Number one, my daughter and I were fighting because she didn't want me there. Watching her not remote learning. So, but yeah, it basically financial and emotionally, I'm the kind of person that needs to be out and with people and doing something I enjoy. And I think if you it's kind of a cliche term, but if you have a job that you love, you don't feel like you're working.
Well,
so much. And
I didn't pay Heather to say this, but since she's kind of given me the opening to talk about Lotus, I will.
You can still slip me in.
I can still slip her the money, sure.
I'm kidding.
Heather, please emphasize the fact that this is a wonderful career for women, because I feel like I'm going to be standing on a street corner soon holding up a sign, women, come over here,
Come
please.
to me.
Yes. And
it truly is. I started my career back in 2004 with Edward Jones back in Montana. A lot of you know I'm from Montana. Came out here, and at the beginning of 2008, which anyone in the financial world knows that was a crazy, scary time, especially if you were a fairly new advisor who basically had a pretty good run from 2004 to 2008. But it's the kind of career that you truly feel like you're helping people.
Yeah.
And I obviously don't focus just on women, but as a single mom especially, I kind of have a kindred soul for people that are out there doing the job of both mom and dad, and and just ways to maximize what they're doing. And everyone's situation is different. Everyone is comfortable with a different situation, but it's fun to work with those people and have them come back and say, you really helped me. And me, that's
That's rewarding.
rewarding,
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure. Lara, what about you? What's keeping you on the job?
Gosh, you know, we talk about work-life balance, and lots of times people think about as how do I juggle work and how do I juggle life, like what I want to do, my family, etc. I think for me, the balance was I liked my work self. I liked, you know, I do like my job, so that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I felt like helping clients, and I worked with nonprofits for a long time, and that was rewarding. And I felt like I had my work self that I really liked and I really wanted to keep in it. And then I had my family, mom life and wife life and friend life that I really liked too. And I felt like if I immersed myself in either one too much in the early years, I would not be as happy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's also financial. It changes, you know, do we want to do this or that, or what choices do we want to make? I wanted to contribute. I wanted to have my own salary.
Yes.
Because like you said, you never know. And I worked part-time for years when the kids were in school, and that was a great balance for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to teach my daughter, you can be an executive and have a full-time nanny. You can have a stay-at-home parent and a dad. You can work part-time, you cannot work. There's so many options to women, right? And you're seeing your mom balance, and it works. And then I went back to the workforce full-time because I felt like it was ready. Kids are in school full-time. And I'm glad I stayed in the workforce because I really, again, enjoy my job.
I love everything you just said, because what it, I think, shows a lot of the women, hopefully who are listening even, is that you can be very intentional about your career path. This works for me now, so I'm going to step this way. This doesn't work for me at this time, so I'm going to step away. I'm going to do it this way instead. And you're still very successful. So it can be done, right? And we come from financial services, but I'm sure across the board, if you are good at what you do, companies, the right companies, I'll say, the right companies are going to do whatever they can to retain you. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female. Hone your craft. Be the best at whatever you're doing, and there's no reason why they would ever not want you there.
It's such a great point, because I will never forget the first time they couldn't go to daycare. They're sick, and I had to go to a client. My husband had to go to work, and we stood there in the kitchen in a face-off, right? We're staying home.
Oh, yes.
Whose day is more important? I mean, who hasn't been there, right?
Right.
And we just lovingly said to each other, you know, but then it dawned on me, like, I want it to be me.
Yeah.
I need the flexibility to say, you know what, it's a stay-home day for me. It's a work-from-home day. And that working from home wasn't a thing back then. You were expected to do FaceTime if you wanted to advance in your career. And so I said, you know what, it's me. I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to step out completely. And even my husband recognized, he goes, you know, I think you'll be nicer if you go to work. You know? I mean,
You should leave now.
right? It takes someone that really knows you.
Yes, to be able to
just
say that.
say, you know
Yeah.
what, I try it out.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you rearranged things financially, looked at part-time, and, you know, the company I worked for at the time, I will say not everybody was on board with the part-time remote flex schedules, but I happened to work with, and this is going back to what you just said, I happened to work with two individuals who were out of the box. I technically worked for the San Francisco office, and they're like, you know what, we get that you have family in Chicago, and to come out here and be alone, you know, pregnant with twins, probably not going to be, you'll probably walk away.
Yeah.
So let's try it. Work from home in Chicago, part-time,
There you go.
you know, work for us. And they just really, let's try it out and see how it goes.
Yes.
Well, I got my work done. It
Yes.
worked. And then more women in our company were able to take advantage of doing that. More people opened up to those flexibilities. So it could have been a different, I may have not been sitting here
Yeah.
if the company had forced me to make a decision.
Right.
You know?
I think what this, before we jump into the rest of the Q&A with the audience, I would probably just conclude this part by saying this is an important moment in history where companies really have the opportunity, whether in financial services or other industries, to really do right by their people. Let's view this as from an optimistic standpoint. Yes, we're in a bit of a crap show situation right now in terms of women being hit so abnormally through the pandemic. But this gives us the opportunity to kind of hit the reset button, I think, and say, how do we, because here's the other thing. The interesting thing about this pandemic is that, yes, we had a recession back in 2008. But you know what, folks? This one, while it was a recession, was a little bit different in that it hit really sharp, really quick, and it hit certain groups and demographics, and it didn't touch others. In fact, it made others better, right? I've read a statistic that a lot of men have been promoted through this because they become fiercely productive, right? On whose back would be my question. So let's, and when I say women, let's also, again, you cannot begin to say enough times how women of color, African-American women, have been hit monstrously by this pandemic. So whether you're a business owner, if you're a head of a company, if you're an employee and you see your peers affected in this manner, it's really up to each and every one of us to do better going forward. So we're in a negative situation. How do we turn it around? We can only turn it around by learning from it and trying to correct it going forward. So that's what I would say from a company perspective, but also from an individual standpoint. So with that, we'll bring Amanda back into the picture and see if we've got some questions from the audience as we move forward. And yeah, fancy pen.
Like hop, hop, hop.
I'm back. All right. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be going through those. In the meantime, I want to touch base. So Lara, you had mentioned that the dialogue you've been having with your daughter about, the financial world, occupations, etc. How are, Anita, Heather, how are you two kind of planting those seeds about financial wealth and security? How are you having that conversation?
Well, it's definitely a challenge. So I have a 15-year-old who thinks that everything is just on a card right now. So we've really worked these past few years trying to get her to understand a little bit more about how things work, and it's not just, use your card. But I think that's more of a teenage type thing versus kids. But especially I think it's just starting young,
Right.
and making sure that they have the skills and they understand, the basics. There's so many kids that they may never even know how to write a check. It's just those basics that we're not teaching in school, and it's not just financial; it's life skills. So.
And I know they have apps now to teach kids how to budget money and try to save up for bikes or, Xbox or whatever.
Although I would be afraid to know what TikTok says about the budget. So let's not even go there. I think you start real simple and Heather has no choice. She's got to do this at home. You have to start modeling as a mom. You have to start modeling that behavior for your children, especially your daughters, right? We're still coming out of a time in history where there's traditional roles at home, maybe not in every home, but in many homes. And for us to try to reverse that, we have to play that role, right? I would probably argue that Heather and I, it's unique, right? Because we're in the industry. So when we're at home, we're going to be active participants because we know what's up. But we can't take for granted that everybody has that situation. So especially, I love the point, start young. From what I understand, as early as 7 or 8 years old, they know. I mean, and don't, there seems to be some type of controversy between, do we pay our children for chores, right? But if you make it almost seem like they're earning an income for doing things around, then they get the concept of working, earning that money, and then, putting it in various buckets. Am I going to use this to spend? Am I going to use this to save? Giving away, giving money away as they grow older, of course, not at the age of 7. But my message would be start early and model the appropriate behavior and talk about it, for God's sakes. We don't talk about it, right? There's so many other more sexier topics at home, and I get it, but we've got to talk about it to get them comfortable.
It's a life skill.
Yes.
And I think that's a great point, because I think kids need to know what things cost.
Yes.
I mean, this is what our mortgage is. These are what taxes are. This is what we spend on groceries. They need to know it's not just this card that you use for everything and it's never going to run out of money.
Right.
So I've always been very transparent with my daughter, and it's always just been her and I, so it's been easy to be transparent. But but,
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, they don't have to know all the details, but I think it's important that they know that
Yeah.
this is what things cost. And
Right.
at some point, I'm hoping you're gonna be out and you're gonna be paying for your own stuff, and so you need to know that this is how the budgeting works. And
Yes.
This is how it goes.
So here's a question. Do each of you have a wealth role model? If so, who's that person and how did you discover them?
I would just say Anita and Heather right now.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, can you feel the love? I love that.
I am going to be emailing for sure.
Okay.
So get ready.
I think I might be met with snickers, but this is just because it's recent in memory. A couple of weeks ago, I watched a biography on whatever channel, biography channel, I think, on Dolly Parton. Do you know this woman
Huge one.
Yes.
Okay.
Huge feeling.
came
Yeah.
from a family with 12 kids in the poorest part of the Appalachian Mountains. And she's grown into this, not just a megastar with lots of money, but the thing that I love most about her is that she's incredibly philanthropic, right? So you've got this woman who comes out of nowhere, right? Rags to riches, classic rags to riches story. But I like the fact that she's become so evolved that she's like embedded in society, right? She's not just an artist. In fact, I think she does something for libraries. She's like sends
She
books
provides
out. I mean,
books for kids.
And I think she did all the vaccines, right?
She
did all of
donated,
the-
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She did.
She's
Yeah.
amazing.
So currently, that is my woman of the month. So
Okay.
You know, I think mentors, like best friends and all those kind of things, they come and go in your life. And so me, I've always tried to, I don't want to use the term steal, but take a little bit from everybody. So, you know, everywhere I go, I'm always writing these notes down, and I have these notebooks that I keep and these steno pads that I keep, but I think we can all learn from each other.
yes.
You know, and you know, it doesn't have to be a Dolly Parton, even though she's fabulous, but it could be, you know,
It could be your next door neighbor.
it could be your
That's
next door
true.
neighbor. It could be your grandma's friend who's, you know, dies a
Or your home ec teacher.
multi-millionaire and nobody even knew she had it, you know. It's
Right.
just, yeah, I think we can all learn from all the people in our lives.
Yes.
So I think one of the hard things for some people watching is that, let's say they tried to venture out and they made maybe a really bad financial decision. And I'm not just, you know, it's not about me, everybody. It could be though, it's okay too.
We've all done it.
That, you know, when that happens, your confidence is like shook, right?
Right.
Like you did it one time, well, forget that didn't work out. How do you, because I'm sure, not putting you guys on the spot that you don't want to share what maybe you made a bad decision, but how do you work around, what do you say to yourself to kind of like, okay, that was a bad decision, I'm gonna find the confidence, I'm gonna do it again, like when that happens, where do you find that? Where can you find that confidence?
I don't know that there's such a thing as a bad decision, is there? I think you make the decision that you make at the time that you make it because it's appropriate for that time in your life. You know, I tell this story so many times, I think if there's any friends on the call here, they'll fall asleep. But my husband and I quit our jobs and moved to San Francisco without a job prospect in sight, right? We borrowed from our 401k. And the hilarious part is I'm in financial services and I would tell my clients, don't ever do that. And what does she do? She takes the money from her 401k, loads up a U-Haul and drives off with this man to San Francisco. So do I regret it? Absolutely not. I mean, was it like from an academic perspective? Sure, it was the stupidest thing we could have done at the time, right? I had a great job. I was making a lot of money for a 29-year-old. I worked my tail end off, but I thought, you know what? We don't have kids now. If we don't do this now, then when?
Yeah.
So we did it. And I honestly think that you are a product right now, every decision that you made up until then. And the great thing is, and I will say this is why I love this country, you always have a chance to bounce back. You just do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can say that for the rest of the globe, I'll be honest, but right here, as an immigrant, I'm stating this is a wonderful country. And if you have that will of, okay, might not have been the smartest thing, how do I pivot? Then pivot, right? So, I don't know.
And learn from it.
And learn from
Yeah.
it. That's right.
I would say I was a stupid youth. Bought a car out of my price range. Moved downtown to apartment, really couldn't afford. And so, of course, what do? You use that little card. But then the bill comes due, and here I am, like $24 to my name before the next payday. And I'm like, wow, I had peanut butter and jelly. I don't like living like this. But it's funny how you think, gosh, you are an idiot to get yourself into that, but you're young and you don't think, you're not thinking of your future. But I got to say that you're right. Like, then you pivot. And then ever since, like my husband and I, conservative, we've always bought under, here, you can afford this in the house. We're like, yeah, we're going to go here.
Yeah.
I love to use vehicles, especially with kids, because I'm like, bang it up, have at it. I don't have to stress, right? Right. Do your juice boxes in the back. I don't have to go back there. It's fine. And save, like I heard the automatically pay yourself. So I automatically have money taken out of my paycheck. It's just a bill, right, if you will, to be put away, and it's amazing. And then maximizing 401k and we always kind of did the, can we afford the house, car, et cetera, on one salary just in case. Yeah. So you said emergency fund, it took a while to build that, but we always did the, if we really pulled back, could we do it, and try to stay in that range.
Right.
And so, starting out terrible, everything gets paid off, you make better decisions.
Yes.
You can pivot, like you said, you have the opportunity to be like, okay, that was done, let's move forward smarter.
Right.
And maybe I wouldn't be smarter had I not been so stupid.
Right.
That's true, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. All right, we have time for one more question, and this comes from Rima. Hi, Rima.
Oh.
Okay, so she was wondering, what books or authors do you most recommend for college age and adult women who miss the boat on financially educating themselves?
Well, you haven't missed the boat.
No, that's for sure.
So,
No, not at all.
But I mean, for me, I can't just pick one out of the sky. But I'd say, there's just so much out there that just get on the computer and you'll find resources everywhere.
So, couple of things. If you want a book, great. I would go with, Woman's Worth. What is her name? Blaney, Eleanor Blaney. I like it because it's high level. My mind works like bullet points, as you guys saw on that slide. I don't like to get into the nitty gritty. Tell me what I need to know, and she kind of addresses big topics in that manner. So Eleanor Blaney, the name of the book is Woman's Worth. Here's what else I will say. Heather made a great point. I mean, the amount of information that's available on the internet now, and yeah, some of it could be suspect, but go with the people who are well known. I personally read a lot of that old man, Mr. Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
When he opens his mouth, I listen very closely. When it comes specifically to investing, I am not always only interested specifically in investing. As you know, I'm making a career out of really focusing on women, bringing them into this industry and helping them learn the ins and outs of money management. So from that aspect, Sally Krawcheck, she's a titan in our industry. I would urge each of you to write her name down, Sallie, not with a Y. And anytime she writes a blog, or she's on CNBC, or she's on, watch it and read it, because she talks and thinks the way you and I do. And I say she's a titan because she's lived in that corporate America. She was actually CEO. She was head of Merrill Lynch, B of A. She was head of like some of the largest wealth management institutions globally. Okay, so folks, she knows what she speaks. She's now doing her own thing, and her communication style and approach, I like it because it's not intimidating. It really does away with the jargon, and she says, there'll be an entire 2-paragraph blog on Roth IRAs, right? Sounds really interesting, I know, but she makes it interesting. Read it. Why should you know about it? If you miss the boat, you feel like on a certain topic, here's what you can do instead. So she's a big one. So if you've got the time to read a book, there's a lot of them out there, Millionaire Next Door, obviously, some of these that I grew up kind of reading. But nowadays I focus a lot on women and financial blogs, and there are a lot, and they are really, really good. Clever Girl Finance is another one. I mean, I make a habit out of reading these types of things. So I like the concept behind that question because it's all about self-education. Sure, there's resources everywhere, but start being proactive and start taking the initiative. So,
Do we have time for maybe circling back to one more point?
Real quickly, because we're at 7:01.
Okay. So you have somebody that's on a super tight budget. You know, even $10 is hard to put away. And it's funny because I had friends who would want to plan for vacation. They would literally, from their grocery budget, if they could squeeze out $20, they put it in an envelope.
yes.
And
yes.
my mom used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
That used to be her fun money. So then it would actually build up. She'd have $400 or $500 in her
Yes.
wallet that she just, okay, I had, this for the week, but I didn't need it, so I'm gonna stick this away.
Right.
It's sort of the same concept, right? I mean, if you're on a tight budget, if you can squirrel away even a little, it's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and all those little things add up.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So I'm just checking through. Can you repeat Sally's name again?
Sure. Sallie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Krawczyk.
Krawczyk? Okay.
Krawcheck.
Yes, we do have more time. I
Okay.
apologize. So, one other thing, and people, please feel free to put,
Yeah,
Your
keep the
questions
questions
on.
coming.
Questions in the chat.
okay, so Julie Carlson, shout out to you. She's now following Sally on Twitter.
Awesome.
Nice. Good job, Julie.
Sally owes me a commission.
Yeah, seriously, she's gonna be popular. Okay, so what is the one thing women should do but often don't when it comes to retirement? We might have touched on this, but I think it's important.
I want to know the answer to this one.
What do they not do?
Like starting today.
Here's what I feel like I'm not doing. We were just, my husband and I are having a conversation, what age can we retire? If my employer's watching, I am not retiring anytime soon.
I'm writing this down.
Just looking in the future, way out. But, what age can we retire? We've got college educations to get through. What are the decisions we should be making if we're looking in the future? We've socked away in the 401k, hopefully have Social Security coming. But I don't think we ever looked at, what is our budget when we retire? If we retire at this age, is this what our budget is? If
Yeah.
we keep working, what about this? What about, I feel like it's time to start thinking about that, and that's something I've not done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've saved, but I've not figured out, okay, now what? Like, what's my next step?
When I was reading Heather's intro, I was thinking about this. We got to put a fine point on this. The whole concept around planning, right? Financial planning is a big one. I don't want people to become so obsessed with the investing part. It ain't that hard, ladies. Investing should just be viewed as a means to the end. The real important part is, are you working with somebody that can help you with a financial plan? And it doesn't have to be complicated. What does that mean? It means, what is your goal? If you have a set amount of money and you want to retire in 25 years, 20 years, 25 years, whatever it is, what do you need? Go through the thought process that Lara just talked about with your spouse, your significant other, or yourself if you're flying solo. And ask yourself, what do you need by the end of that time frame to have a decent life? And then you can put a plan together with a trusted advisor. And what that plan is essentially going to do is say, you need to be earning, your investments need to be earning this much every year for you to meet that goal. And oh, by the way, here are the things that you can do on your own. Here's what you need to earn. Here's why you can't stop working. Here's where you're spending. The guardrails need to be as far as spending is concerned. So the financial plan will tell you all of that. And it's not a static document, right? It's a living, breathing thing that evolves every year. And investing is just one piece of that. So I think that that's an important comment to make. So circling back to what can you do in terms of retirement, ask yourself right now at this very second, evening of June 22nd, do you have a financial plan? And if you don't, get cracking on it. That's
And I have to say, I may or may not have a financial plan. But the point is, I think it's very intimidating and very scary, even that question. I mean, a lot of us, you know, when you're like, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Some of us are like, oh, crap, I don't know. I don't know what health issues I'm going to have. I don't know what the, you know.
Sure.
And so it's very daunting. It's scary. And if you're not in the field,
yes.
It's like when you think of investing, you think, you know, oh my gosh, I have to have a ton of dough. It has to be hanging out of my pocket, and people need to be following me, picking up my money. And you just get to make comments like, okay, put it all on, you know, this stock or whatever. And so I think that just breaking that down and with the Sally Krawcheck, I say her name right? If she breaks it down very, like, no jargon, none of this, none of that, because it is intimidating for people who are not in the financial world, or, you know, cannot work with you ladies.
Yeah.
But they
But
can.
I think that's a great point, Amanda, because you're being candid and you're saying it is scary.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people feel the way you feel. And so I think it all comes back to the education. You have to educate yourself. You have to Anita's point, you have to know, you know, what's it going to look like? How much money do I need to be coming in? How much money is going to be coming out? And those are things that
And coming to
that
terms with that
professionals can
is
help you
very
with.
scary, because
Yeah.
if it's not, then what do you do? Like,
Right.
well, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole another issue.
Right.
Yep.
Right. You have to push past the fear, though, because again, I will say it again, you do not have the luxury of not paying attention to it. You just don't. You go back to those statistics I was reading off, you know, if you're married, at some point, he may not be there, right? Either by divorce, widowhood, what have you. I hate to be depressing to people, but it's just a fact. We have to look at the reality of the situation and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, our children, whoever's in our circle of, you know, who are we caretaking for, right? And in order to do that, it is not selfish to think about yourself and your financial security. If anything, you're not doing your job if you don't. If you're not taking care of yourself, there's no way you can take care of others in the house. So,
and I'm going to go back to the gray statistic, the gray divorce.
yeah,
I haven't heard it called that. I've heard a lot of things, but not the gray divorce. But so are you seeing that a lot? And are you seeing it where women have just not paid attention? The bills come in, the man pays it. And the women want to know and want to learn. And the men are like, why? What do you need to do? You know what I mean? Like, how are you helping these women? Like, okay, maybe ask these questions, maybe start educating yourself, whether it's books. Like, how do women kind of navigate that with that divorce?
I feel sorry for everybody on the screen right now because I might keep them here for another 2 hours. So you might as well get another bottle while you're listening.
And maybe some tissues.
Oh
Because
my
it sounds like
gosh.
this is, I didn't mean, well, you know.
It's such a phenomenal question. So, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this. Yes, the answer is yes. Women are terrified. And here's the other thing that I noticed at my prior firm. I put together Women in Wealth Initiative. It's not specific to Anita Knotts. Every firm has it. Trust me, there's a Women in Wealth Initiative aimed at education for their female clients. And what I started noticing, what myself, our team started noticing, is that women, once they get a divorce, will actually leave the advisor that their husband chose because they still view that as his deal, right? And a lot of times, even if it's not really acrimonious, you're still not fond of this man. And you want to find a way to kind of remove
Separate.
yourself from that dynamic, especially when it comes to money. And I say this because for advisors, what I would say, and what I said in my Women in Wealth Initiative to advisors is make sure that you are looking at the woman in the meeting. Make sure you are asking her questions. Make sure you are saying, are you comfortable with what's being discussed? Because if, with the divorce rate as high as it is, north of 50%, if 1 out of 2 couples are getting divorced, you stand a pretty good chance of, and I hate to break it down to just you might lose assets, but you might lose assets because that woman's going to walk out with 50% of whatever you're managing for that couple right now. if you don't treat her like a part of the equation. So it's huge. But then flipping over to how a woman should be looking at this, it's all the more reason, right? That you don't want to prepare and constantly be thinking about a potential negative situation. But my gosh, we do so good in planning everything else in our lives. Why aren't we planning for, the potential to potentially be alone? And it doesn't have to be divorce. Like I said, it could be anything.
Someone passing away. Or
Absolutely.
Right.
It could be a tragedy, right? But you have to be realistic that it could happen. And when you are in the midst of that tragedy, that's not the time to start giving yourself
Figuring
a
it out.
crashed, course in money management. So.
Okay, that wasn't too depressing. That was all right, right?
That's good.
Okay, so, wow, I kind of went through some questions here.
Do we have others?
Well, I was looking on the chat. No, we are,
We've lost them all.
So, do you guys have any advice as far as if you could give yourself, and I think a couple of, had said some, but if one piece of advice to your teenage self that you wish you listened, what would it be?
I'll go last.
Don't kiss that
Because she's
boy.
going to do mic drop.
Don't sneak out of the house in the middle. No,
Yeah.
I assume you didn't mean personal choices, you meant financial choices.
Well, that's another.
I feel like I want to advise my teenage kids more than my teenage self right now. I'm trying to
Right,
think, okay,
yep,
me, it's, okay, my teenage self, not those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we
Um,
covered that one, but
yeah.
yeah, and I'm not talking about the whole like cassette tapes back in the day, all them for a penny and like stuff like that. I shouldn't do this.
Although I think, the generation I was raised by and my grandparents, right? That's exactly what happened. Men took care of the finances and the women just didn't. Like, my mom knew some, but had she had passed away first, maybe I'd have to help her.
Yeah.
Right? Same with my grandparents. I mean, it didn't even come up because my grandmother passed away first, my grandfather handled everything. But, I look at some couples or other family members where I actually think, wow, if he goes or something happens, you're going to need a lot of help because it is hard to think. You really need to know what is your financial situation. You really need to know what things cost. Where are your mortgages? Where's your life insurance? There's a lot of things that I think I take for granted that I know because I handle the finances because I like to. Did I just admit that out loud?
We won't tell.
Something it appeals to my accountant self to do the budget and stuff, but I think I think our generation does better about getting involved, but I wonder if a lot of my generation still sees what happened before and it's shifting. Like, I feel like my kids' generation is going to be more involved. I don't
Sure.
know.
Oh, yeah,
We
for
hope
sure.
so, yeah.
What do you guys think?
If we're doing the right things, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's just the education. Every experience, good or bad, is going to lead you to learn something. I'm that kind of person that feels like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And obviously not every choice we make is perfect, but if you use it as a learning experience. So just keeping yourself educated and definitely involved in your finances. If you're in your family, make sure that you know what's going on, to your point, and how you can best take advantage of things.
I like those answers. I think from my perspective, I wish I had started working sooner, like as a teenager. I know that sounds goofy, but I come from an Indian family, and maybe I shouldn't make a generalization about all Indians, but Indian parents are very they guard their kids from a lot. Like, they protect them about everything, and which is good, and I can see the benefit in that, right? I didn't go off the rails, but I kind of wish I went off the rails a little bit, earlier, because then, trying different things, trying different jobs, you would never have found Anita Knotts working at the local Dairy Queen. It just wouldn't have happened. And I feel like had I done that earlier, perhaps I would have learned the value of money earlier, right? And I did, and my career's been wonderful, and I'm very blessed. But I think that I'm going to do it different with my kids. Like, they're working.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I slaved away at some jobs where
Yeah.
you worked.
Yes.
I mean, my first job was to tasseling corn. I mean, talk about a job.
That's a hard job.
You earned
Yes.
every dollar.
Yes,
But you do appreciate the money you earn, and you're a little bit more careful then.
that's right.
It just happens to be there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's a valuable lesson, and it's interesting because my husband also probably doesn't want me admitting this, but he's been working since, gosh, like
Yeah.
13, 14 years old, farm,
Babysat,
doing
tasseling
whatever.
corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked.
But you know,
yeah.
there's a sense of pride that comes with that. Like I sense it even when I talk to him that, and it's not about the money. It's about the actual work ethic, developing a work ethic that this is fine, that I earned this, and then I guess eventually as a teenager it is about money, right? Like I can afford some really cool things because I worked hard to get this. And if
Right.
you can develop that concept early on, boy, you're doing yourself a favor too.
Well, and
Yeah.
they understand the value of money. So
Yes.
some of you know, my son started working at age 11. I didn't make him do this. He wanted to work, and so he's been working on this farm, and he loves it. And it's a hard job. You're out in the
Yeah,
field by
physical.
yourself
Oh,
picking
yeah.
beans. It's hot, and he loves it. And he really loves getting that paycheck and going to the bank and then divvying it up. And he is really cognizant of like, well, do I want to spend it at Dairy Queen? Do I want to spend it, on just video games or what? He is already starting to learn how to spend his money and the value of, do I want to spend the money on that?
Yes, yes. That's a good question.
All right, well, I am going to close out tonight. I want to thank our panel tonight, Anita Knotts, Lotus Women's Institute, Lara Stanton from Sikich LLP, and Heather Gottfried from Citibank for this important dialogue, as well as our chamber staff and Catherine and Jeffrey Ross from Ross Creative Works for helping with all the AV techie stuff.
God for them.
Holy cow. A reminder about the budgeting books. Please remember that Catholic Charities, the Women in Business non-for-profit, is collecting donations to purchase budget planners for each of the 60 households in their supportive housing programs. Please help them meet the goal of giving every family a planner and donate a minimum of $13 to help each family reduce debt and gain financial independence. And you can donate by clicking on the chamber website on the Women in Business page at the bottom there. As well as if you want to get a hold of any of our panelists or any of our board members, we are on the Naperville Chamber Women in Business page. Please save the date for our upcoming golf event on Tuesday, August 17th from 5 to 7 at White Eagle. There will be details coming out soon about that, but at least just save the date because it's going to be a great event. All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you,
Start
Amanda.
saving now.
Get going.
And yeah, have a good night, everyone.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
Thank you.